Hey everyone, it's time for another story. Before we start, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss any updates and comment on which manhwas you want to see here. Let's go. In this story, the protagonist thought that being able to see other people's life scripts would be an exciting advantage, but little did he know that the system was trying to kill him. On top of that, several people are after him trying to end the poor guy's life. It's a really interesting plot to follow, with characters that develop very well. Let's dive in. The story begins at the foot of the mountain in the land of the Holy Spirit. Many inhabitants gather around an elderly man known as Mr. Su, who claims that no one understands Bagua better than he does. With multiple people speaking at once, Su asks them to take turns with their questions. A woman tells Su that she has more than 18 concubines and over 30 children, and she asks who should inherit her legacy. Su immediately tells her to forget about it, revealing that none of those children are actually hers. Next, a young man approaches Mr. Su, saying that he has been close to the girl he likes for half a year and asks if they will finally become a couple. Su instantly responds that the girl will be in the forest behind Green Tea Peak tonight and advises him to go there and see for himself. Who knows, maybe he'll get lucky. Meanwhile, the protagonist checks the system's mission list for the day to earn destiny points. One of the missions is to reveal the truth to Mr. Lu about his countless descendants despite the fact that he is infertile. Another task is to help Mr. Lun see the true nature of the girl he likes. By 12:15, the protagonist has only gained 25 destiny points, making him question why he has earned so little. He starts to believe that divination is no longer a viable path for him. This is when we are introduced to protagonist, Su Lai. It is revealed that in his previous life he died of overwhelming happiness after getting high scores on his college entrance exam. After that, he was reincarnated into this world as a 7-year-old war orphan. Somehow, he was taken to Yuqing Peak by his unreliable master and became a disciple. However, within 2 years, his master ran away, leaving him behind. That was when Su Lai was granted a special power. Then the system informs him that he had agreed to remain single for 1,000 years while being bound to it. Su Lai is startled and questions when he ever agreed to such a ridiculous condition. And seriously, what kind of question is that? Realizing that he can only advance his cultivation stages using destiny points, Su Lai laments that, although he is not a genius, he managed to progress through 3 stages in 2 years. But now he can no longer cultivate properly. Setting cultivation aside for the moment, Su Lai sees a man walking by and asks the system to show that man's life script. The system informs him that he must fulfill certain conditions before he can read someone's script. For now, he can only see the color of their script, but not the content. The system then tells Su Lai that if he wants to start reading other people's scripts, he must grab them by the chin and say, "You've caught my attention, you little fox." Doing so will allow him to access their life stories. Su Lai is utterly shocked upon reading this and wonders what kind of person on earth would ever have the courage to say such a thing. A completely understandable reaction. Later, when visiting his sister, Q Canyon, Su Lai accidentally fulfills the system's condition and manages to read her golden script. However, as he reads her story, he realizes that the entire front portion of the script is completely blank, except for a single line on the last page. After 1,000 years, Canyon will kill her older brother. Holding his head, she will attain enlightenment and ascend to immortality. Shortly after, Canyon tells the protagonist that the disciple ceremony held once every 10 years has just begun and that they must head there. Still shaken after reading his sister's script, the protagonist wonders what sin he must have committed for her to want to kill him. On the way to the ceremony, the protagonist comments to his sister that this year's event seems quite lively. He hopes they can help their master recruit a good disciple. Suddenly, he hears someone exclaim that the saint is present. They mention that she never attends the disciple ceremony. Could she be there to take on a disciple? This is when Jiang is introduced, the saint of the Holy Spirit land. She is one of the 2 most talented disciples in the sacred land with a status second only to the elders. As such, she holds the highest rank among the disciples. Wondering why a dark mist surrounds Jiang's script, the system presents a mission to the protagonist. The mission states that he must save Saint Jiang's life with a 1-day time limit. The reward is 500 destiny points, while the penalty for failure is his own death. Such a fair punishment, huh? Shocked by what he just read and visibly reacting, Canyon asks if he's all right. He quickly replies that he's fine and makes up an excuse, saying that someone was distracted while looking around and accidentally stepped on his foot. The protagonist realizes that this is the first mission assigned to him by the system. If he wants to save the saint's life, he must read her script and discover the danger awaiting her. He then asks the system what he needs to do to read Jiang Mingxi's script. The system bluntly replies that he should ask her to read it. Horrified, the protagonist exclaims that the saint and her followers will turn him into dust if he makes such a ridiculous request. The system, unfazed, tells him that if he doesn't do it, he will die anyway and turn into dust regardless. Without hesitation, the protagonist rushes toward the saint and buries his head in her chest. Jiang Ningxi immediately slaps him, sending him flying. Two of the saint's followers angrily confront him, demanding to know how he dares to molest the saint. They declare that he must have a death wish. People around here sure love throwing around death threats, huh? In an attempt to de-escalate the situation, the protagonist urgently tells everyone that they need to listen to him. He insists that the saint is in danger. A young man scoffs, claiming that the only danger here is the protagonist himself. He accuses him of coveting someone far out of his league. He then warns the protagonist that the last person who disrespected the saint had his cultivation completely destroyed and wonders aloud how they should deal with him. Panicked, the protagonist seeks help from the system, asking what he can exchange for his 25 destiny points. The system informs him that he can trade them for a 1-minute power boost. Without hesitation, he makes the exchange. Freed from the saint's followers, the protagonist dashes toward her. However, in a split second, he grabs the saint's disciple instead. Jiang Ningxi immediately tells him that if he has a grievance, he should take it up with her and leave her disciple out of it. Holding the disciple in his arms, the protagonist demands that no one approach. He once again warns the saint that her life is in danger, claiming that he is a cartographer. He pleads for her to trust him. The onlookers erupt in outrage, declaring that the protagonist is holding a child hostage and demanding that he stop making excuses. Someone else taunts him, saying that if he likes the saint so much, he should just accept being weak and let the child go. That's some next-level manipulation right there. The protagonist then tells the saint that she likes pears and hates eels. She also has a habit of kicking off her blanket while sleeping, and every morning, her hair is a mess. He adds that her favorite color is pastel pink. She always steps forward with her left foot first, and she loves spirit animals, but they always end up dying under her care. Jiang Ningxi immediately tells him to shut up, but she's clearly shaken. How does he know all of this if she's never told anyone? She begins to wonder if he can truly predict the future. Still doubtful, she demands to know what any of this has to do with her disciple and orders him once again to let her go. The protagonist insists that this has everything to do with her. He declares that her new disciple is actually the one plotting against her. According to him, she used an ancient secret technique to hide her true identity and infiltrated the disciple's ceremony with the intent to kill the saint. He then turns to the disciple and calls her out by name, Saint of the Darkman sect. One of the onlookers scoffs, saying that's impossible. How could an innocent little girl be the feared saint of the Darkman sect? As his power boost nears its final moments, the protagonist swiftly pulls a dagger from his sleeve and threatens to strike the disciple. Without hesitation, the saint lunges at him to protect her disciple. Just then, the system informs the protagonist that his power-up has ended. Following the blast caused by Jiang's attack, the disciple is revealed to be none other than Mo Lan, the saint of the Darkman sect, a 9-tailed fox from the Black Fox clan. Smirking, she admits she never expected a random passerby to ruin her plans, and she would have gotten away with it too, if it weren't for this meddling kid. Without delay, Mo Lan attacks Jiang Ningxi using the protagonist's dagger. However, the protagonist throws himself in front of the attack, taking the stab wound to his stomach instead. Furious, Jiang calls the Darkman saint an insolent witch and hurls a fire spell straight into Mo Lan's chest. She then draws her flaming sword to finish her off, but before she can strike, she realizes that the Mo Lan in front of her is merely a spirit projection. The spirit smirks and ominously declares that she will return to the Holy Spirit land soon. Jiang Ningxi turns to the protagonist, her gaze complicated. This is the first time they ever met, so why would he risk his life for her? The protagonist struggles to speak, but his vision blurs. Mustering the last of his strength, he barely manages to tell his sister, Canyon, I'm not a pervert. Then he loses consciousness. What a mortifying final statement, huh? At Yusheng Peak, the protagonist awakens in an unfamiliar room, lying on a bed that isn't his. His sister, Canyon, sits beside him, kneeling on the bed, anxiously waiting for him to wake up. As he sits up, he groggily tells her that he's alive and guesses that she must have been worried sick. Overcome with emotion, Canyon exclaims how relieved she is that he's all right. However, the protagonist suddenly notices something. Without hesitation, he leaps out of bed. Canyon stares at him in confusion and asks what's wrong. He quickly replies that it's nothing important, just hunger. Realizing he hasn't eaten, Canyon recalls that there's still some porridge on the stove and says she'll go get him a bowl. The moment she leaves the room, the protagonist asks the system if the saint crisis has been resolved. One less thing to worry about, hopefully. The system displays the result. He successfully saved the saint of the Holy Spirit land, Jiang Ningxi. Her script has returned to its original golden color, no longer shrouded in darkness. The protagonist is relieved. If her script is back to gold, that means he won't die. Still, he hadn't expected the Saint's script to be golden. She must truly be someone blessed with a remarkable destiny. The system's scripts are divided into 7 colors: white, blue, green, cyan, red, purple, and gold. The color represents a person's fortune. Ordinary people without any spiritual roots have white scripts. Only cultivators have scripts of different colors. And the protagonist realizes that ever since the system came into effect, he has only seen Qianyan with a golden script. And the Saint Jiang Mingxi is the second person to have a golden-colored script. So he claims that having someone with a golden script owing him a life debt isn't so bad. 3 days later, on the streets of the Holy Land of the Spirit, the protagonist goes out with his sister, Qianyan, grateful that he can finally go for a walk after recovering. Some inhabitants of the region point at him, saying that he is the guy who saved the Saint's life, Su Lai from Yucheng Peak. The protagonist asks his sister if what he's seeing is really real. He also questions why he feels like people are pointing fingers at him and talking behind his back. Some men wonder if he isn't the pervert who reads the Saint's fortune daily to spy on her. They claim that the protagonist is only after her appearance and high cultivation level, the classic opportunist. Hearing that, Qianyan becomes saddened, thinking that her brother is really a pervert. Soon, the protagonist tells her that he has nothing to do with that saint and asks Qianyan to believe him. Then Qianyan says that she thinks she believes him, leaving him dejected. As he walks, a young girl suddenly bumps into him and quickly apologizes. The protagonist notices that this girl has a golden-colored script. The protagonist realizes that the system's search distracted him from accepting a disciple, and now that someone with a golden script has appeared, he sees a great opportunity. He then tells the young girl that he should be the one apologizing. He notes that the young girl doesn't have a master from the Holy Land of the Spirit. The protagonist asks if she is looking for one and questions why she doesn't go to Yucheng Peak with him. He just threw the offer out there. Shocked and speechless, the young girl apologizes to the protagonist and starts crying. She is soon comforted by the protagonist's sister, who tells her that they have no ill intentions and asks what she is doing there all alone. Sniffling, the young girl says that she was walking absent-mindedly and ended up there without realizing it. Qianyan asks the girl where her family is. The girl then says that she has no one and is all alone there. The protagonist finds it strange that someone with a golden script should be very lucky, so he wonders why she is in such an isolated state. He then asks the system what the condition is to read the girl's script. The system says that by lifting the girl 3 times, he will be able to read her script. Without hesitation, the protagonist lifts the girl 3 times as instructed. The young girl, not understanding what is happening, continues to cry. In an attempt to calm her down, the protagonist tells her that he is not a pervert, and that he only did that as a way to cheer her up. Still crying, the young girl says that she knows the 2 of them are good people, but she explains that she is crying because it's the first time she has met someone who has been so kind to her. She then says that she has no home, no money, nothing, and that she does not deserve the kindness shown by the protagonist and his sister. The protagonist tells the girl to stop saying nonsense and assures her that she's a good girl. Then his sister asks the young girl if she is willing to become their younger sister. The protagonist says that they would be lucky to have someone like her in their family. He asks if they can have this good fortune today. Without hesitation, the young girl accepts the protagonist and his sister's offer. It was the only option she had at that moment anyway. On the way to Yucheng Peak, a protagonist asks the system for all the information about the young girl. The system then displays everything about her. Lu Yinling. She possesses the rare silver long lineage. When she turns 11, she becomes homeless and wanders around. At 12, she arrives at the Holy Land of the Spirit by chance and survives on wild vegetables and fruits. Due to her weak lineage and hidden talent that does not manifest, no one in the Holy Land of the Spirit takes her in when she turns 13. She then leaves the Holy Land of the Spirit and hides in the forest, living alone. 10 years later, her lineage begins to awaken. With her luck increasing, she obtains many opportunities, and after 10,000 years, Lu Yinling survives the Great Tribulation and becomes a goddess. She is then known as Lady Silver Lone. In the eastern base of the Darkman sect in the State of Leaves, Mo Lan, furious, declares that she will not forgive the protagonist. She swears that Su Lai will pay dearly. Mo Lan throws a type of scroll with the protagonist's picture to one of her subordinates and states that the man in the picture is Su Lai. She orders them to capture him alive and bring him back to her. Mo Lan's subordinate questions who that man is. Mo Lan immediately tells her not to ask unnecessary questions and just bring him to her immediately. Short and blunt. That subordinate expresses concern for Mo Lan, pointing out that she is injured and has lost a case. She suggests that it would be better for Mo Lan to heal in isolation and prevent the situation from spreading. Mo Lan refuses, saying that she wants everyone to recognize that she has been injured. She adds that she would love to see if Moyu would dare to come and kill her now. Inside Moyu's cave, another saintess of the Darkman sect, Moyu appears to be engaged in some sort of rejuvenation ritual. She is interrupted by one of her subordinates. Enraged, Moyu warns that the man better have urgent news for her. The subordinate urgently reports that the news is about Mo Lan. She is gravely injured and is searching for a man. Moyu immediately deduces that Mo Lan's plan to assassinate the saint of the Holy Land of the Spirit has failed. However, she wonders why Mo Lan is searching for a man. The subordinate then suggests that now is the perfect time to kill Mo Lan once and for all. He proposes that they attack while she is weak and vulnerable. Ominous, Moyu turns to him and asks if he is trying to teach her what to do. Nervously, the subordinate immediately denies any such intention. He almost got himself killed there. Moyu states that she secured her status through careful strategy and that she will not make reckless moves just because of some news about Mo Lan being injured. She asserts that Mo Lan underestimates the power she wields. Still intrigued, Moyu questions again why Mo Lan is so desperate to capture a man. She wonders if he might be her lover. Claiming that Mo Lan can't escape the demonic fox's love complex, she asks the subordinate if he understands what to do. The subordinate immediately replies that he does. He then states that he will kill the protagonist and afterward deal a physical blow to Mo Lan that will kill her as well. Infuriated, Moyu snaps that he knows nothing and delivers a few small punches to his head. Life as a subordinate really is suffering. Moyu then clarifies her orders. He is to capture the protagonist alive and bring him to her. Then she wants 100 female demons brought to her as well. She declares that she will make Mo Lan witness her beloved being defiled before her very eyes. She exclaims that she can't wait to see how insane Mo Lan will become by then. Back at Yucheng Peak, the protagonist asks the system who is talking behind his back. But with a more pressing concern, he questions where his reward is. Since he completed the mission, where are his destiny points? The system responds that it is undergoing updates and that rewards cannot be distributed at the moment. Furious, the protagonist exclaims that the system is nothing but garbage. He did everything to complete the mission, and now the system is making him work for free. Suddenly, the protagonist is surprised by his sister and Lu Yinling. Turning around and seeing Lu Yinling dressed exactly like his sister, the protagonist has multiple bursts of cuteness overload, finding Lu incredibly adorable. Seemingly crying for no reason, Lu Yinling apologizes to the protagonist. This makes him question why she is crying. His sister explains that Yinling encountered some issues with the Yuching technique. Yinling tells the protagonist that Canyon has been teaching her the same technique every day for several days, but she still cannot master it. She laments that she has disappointed both the protagonist and Canyon. The protagonist tells Yinling that he understands but is simply happy that she is not injured or feeling homesick. In an attempt to comfort her, he advises her to take it easy with cultivation. He reassures her that they do not expect her to become insanely strong or anything of the sort. He insists that Yinling's happiness is what matters most. Knowing that this little girl will become Lady Silver Lung one day, he tells her that she just needs to stay cute. Nothing is more important than that. Cuteness is never too much. Inside, the protagonist asks Yinling if she can tell them where she lived before arriving there. Yinling responds that she grew up with her mother and that they lived in a village. Even though her mother treated her very well, she never allowed Yinling to go outside with new clothes. Moreover, she always had to dirty her face before leaving home. The protagonist and his sister question Yinling about why her mother would make such a request. Yinling says that she still does not know what it means, but she explains that a year ago her mother left her a necklace and told her that she was going to a very distant place and could not take Yinling with her. The next day, her mother was gone. Since that day, Yinling has never seen her mother again. Yinling reveals that due to the war, the village no longer exists. Not knowing where to go, she simply followed the villagers. After that, she encountered a group of very, very bad men with terrible intentions, the infamous scum of society. Furious, the protagonist stands up and slams the table, questioning how those bastards dared to target a defenseless child like Yinling. He then asks her what happened after she met those men, also regretting that he was not there to protect her and prevent her suffering. Yinling reassures him that she was fine as a very powerful lady saved her. The lady then told Yinling that it was too dangerous for her to travel alone. She pointed out a path and instructed Yinling to follow it all the way north, where she would find a very tall mountain that reaches the clouds. Upon arrival, she was to look for you. Canyon asks Yinling who the lady told her to find. Yinling says that she was too shocked at the moment and lost consciousness before she could hear the rest. The protagonist reassures her, saying that it's okay. After all, she is at Yucheng Peak, and that place also starts with you. A random coincidence, but all right. Suddenly, someone knocks on the door of the house they are in, asking if the protagonist is there. Upon opening the door, the protagonist is met by Saint Jiang Mingji and her attendants. Jiang immediately apologizes to the protagonist and says she is there to offer her gratitude. The protagonist tells her not to worry about it and says he is happy to see her safe and sound. Inwardly pleased, the protagonist notices that her script has turned a bright golden color after the black mist dissipated. Jiang says that to thank him for saving her life, she has prepared a gift for the protagonist and hopes that he will like it. Grateful, the protagonist tells Jiang that she shouldn't have gone through all that trouble. He mentions that the Hall of Justice has already sent him plenty of spirit stones and pills. However, he thanks her again for being so thoughtful. Stammering, Jiang says that she also wanted to apologize to the protagonist. Just as she is about to explain why, the system notifies the protagonist that it has detected a strong connection between Jiang Mingji's script and his own fate. The system then requests him, as a favor, to place his arm around Jiang's waist and look into her eyes for 10 seconds to read her script. The protagonist realizes that Jiang wants to apologize for something serious and wonders if such an action will deepen the misunderstanding between him and Chanyan. The system immediately notifies him that Jiang's script is also connected to Canyon, and that reading it is highly recommended. Hurry up and read it, dude. Summoning his courage, the protagonist steps forward and places his arm around Jiang Mingji's waist. Everyone in the room is completely stunned by the scene. After the 10 seconds requested by the system pass, it notifies the protagonist that he can now begin reading. Jiang then tells the protagonist that she cannot accept him, that she only saw his ocular secretion. Embarrassed, the protagonist tells Jiang that she misunderstood. Then the system displays Jiang's script. Script content: Jiang Mingxi. She has incredible luck after surviving a life-and-death situation. Within 10 years, she reaches the nascent soul stage and becomes the youngest cultivator to achieve this realm. Later in her cultivation journey, she meets the person she was looking for and falls deeply in love. 1,000 years later, Jiang Mingji fights Canyon. For some reason, she kills her savior. Shocked after reading the script, the protagonist grabs Jiang's hands and says that it doesn't matter whether she accepts him or not. There is only one thing he wants to ask of her. Jiang asks what it is. The protagonist then asks Jiang that if he ever offends her in the future, could she please spare him? Better safe than sorry, right? Furious, Canyon demands to know how her brother dares to offend someone in the future. Panicked, the protagonist tells his sister that's not what he meant. Upset, Canyon tells him to take some time to entertain St. John. She then says she has tasks to do and apologizes for leaving the conversation. Jiang then says that she will go with Canyon. Expressionless, the protagonist watches as both of them misunderstand his words and insists that's not what he meant. Soon after, Jiang and Qianyan leave the room, leaving only the protagonist and Yinling behind. Crying, the protagonist hugs Yinling and tells her that she should stay away from women, that women are too complicated. Yinling calmly responds, reminding him that she is also a woman. A small detail, you know. Heading to the Holy Spirit Book Pavilion, the protagonist decides to use a voucher that Jiang had given him among the presents. Knowing that there are countless books to choose from, he wants to select some cultivation books about the Lone Clan for Yinling and pick 2 books for Qianyan as well. As he walks to retrieve the books, the protagonist accidentally steps on a student's foot and stumbles. In an attempt to regain his balance, he grabs onto a female student nearby, but ends up pulling down her pants in front of everyone. Embarrassed, the protagonist immediately apologizes. The young woman slaps him across the face and runs away immediately. Just then, Zhao Xin appears completely drunk and mutters, "Some people die at the age of 8, but are only buried at 80. At that moment, the protagonist realizes that it was Xin's foot he had tripped over. Soon, the system announces that a new script has been unlocked and asks the protagonist to read it. The protagonist immediately questions why the system treats men so differently. However, the system completely ignores his question and displays Zhao Xin's full script. Zhao Xin, Red Luck, chief disciple of the Hall of Sword and the Spirit sect. He is also a direct disciple of the Holy Land of Spirit. Xin possesses great talent in swordsmanship, but his true weapon of choice is the spear. He wants to train in spear combat, but doesn't know how to tell his father, the Hall Master. As a result, he drowns his sorrows in alcohol and suppresses his true feelings. In the end, he is unable to choose between the two and becomes stuck in the core formation stage. From then on, people see him as a negative example. Fortunately, he has a younger sister blessed with golden luck. Her sword talent surpasses Zhao Xin's. She inherits the Hall of Sword and becomes the strongest Hall Master in the history of the Holy Land of Spirit, eventually rising as the greatest female sword immortal. Zhao Xin finally gives up on his burdens and dies. Without hesitation, the protagonist slaps Zhao Xin across the face. This makes Zhao Xin ask if the protagonist has some kind of death wish. He also exclaims that even his father has never hit his face like that. The protagonist then asks Zhao if he will overcome his internal struggle and start wielding the spear only after killing him. Stammering, Zhao asks who the protagonist is and questions how he knows all this. As a way of proving himself, the protagonist speaks directly to Zhao Xin, saying that he has been shouting about not wanting to practice swordsmanship. He then asks if Zhao feels lost in the Hall of Sword, unable to understand his true feelings. He questions if Zhao is restless because he cannot face himself. He's hitting deep here. Once again, Zhao demands to know who the protagonist is. The protagonist tells Zhao that he is with them, a fortune watcher. Then he hands Zhao a small paper and tells him that if he doesn't want to waste his life achieving nothing and remaining confused, he should come find him and the protagonist will show him the right path. Opening the paper, Zhao reads that the protagonist's services include lockpicking, purchasing ancient spiritual tools and pill refinement furnaces, obtaining certifications, and fortune-telling. The location where Zhao can find him is the Yucheng Peak. Back home with the books he promised to bring, the protagonist finds Qianyun asleep, resting against the dining table. He notices that his sister has grown a lot and developed quite well. Suddenly, she wakes up, surprised to see the protagonist. He then asks if she's awake. Qianyun replies that she's fine and says she will heat up the food since the protagonist hasn't eaten yet. Strangely, the protagonist says that it's fine and that things are good as they are. Curious, Qianyun asks why. To her surprise, the protagonist tells her that she looks so dazzling that he feels hungry. This leaves his sister completely flustered and speechless. Even I feel awkward here. In the Holy Land of Spirits Hall of Sword, Zhao asks a young disciple if this is the information he gathered on Su Lai. Receiving confirmation, Zhao opens the document to read. After going through the details, Zhao remarks that the protagonist doesn't seem trustworthy. He then questions if he really wants to bet his future on someone like him. The young disciple asks Zhao if there is something special about this man named Su Lai. Zhao says that the protagonist has piqued his interest and that he is not a simple person. Perhaps the protagonist will become the most important person in his life. Just then, they are interrupted by a loud knock on the door. It's Lingshu, the girl whose pants the protagonist pulled down in front of everyone at the bookstore. She demands that Zhao go after the man who abused her. Zhao asks who she wants him to beat up and who offended her. Lingshu replies that it was a very rude scoundrel. She says she doesn't care who he is. She just wants Zhao to punish him for her. Zhao then asks for the scoundrel's name and where he is from. That would at least be helpful to know, right? Lingshu says she doesn't know his name or where he lives, but she drew a portrait of him and tells Zhao Xin that he must find this man and take him down. Zhao reassures Lingshu not to worry. He'll take care of it. However, after opening the portrait and seeing the bizarre attempt at a likeness, Zhao wonders how on earth he's supposed to recognize this creature. Behind Yucheng Peak, a protagonist is lying on Qianyun's lap when the system suddenly notifies him that a system update has been completed and that he has received destiny points, prompting him to accept them. It informs him that he has completed the mission to save the saint and has been awarded 500 destiny points. Furthermore, since he changed Jiang Ningxi's fate, her path to celestial Dao realization is now limitless. As a result, he receives a grand reward of 50,000 destiny points. Immediately, the protagonist jumps off Qianyun's lap and rushes into the forest, declaring that he feels a breakthrough coming, and that he must enter seclusion to train. Yinling asks Qianyun if he will be all right. Qianyun explains that the protagonist is about to advance and calls Yinling to stand guard for him. Theoretically hidden, the protagonist opens the system and realizes that, aside from mission rewards, he can also earn large amounts of destiny points by altering the fates of others. The more talented they are, the greater the destiny points rewarded. The more, the better for him. Without hesitation, the protagonist begins rapidly ascending through levels, unleashing a spectacular display of thunder and light. Watching from a distance, Qianyun marvels at his incredible breakthrough and proclaims that he has always been the best. With each sudden breakthrough, the protagonist summons the roars of dragons and phoenixes. The sight leaves the local inhabitants in shock as they wonder how such a celestial phenomenon could be occurring. Some even question, has she returned? After numerous evolutions, the protagonist reaches the fourth stage of cultivation, known as the refined furnace. He notes that his body feels rejuvenated and finds it exhilarating. Soon after, Qianyun and Yinling arrive. He informs them that he has progressed to the refined furnace stage. An interesting evolution. Amazed by the protagonist's advancement, Qianyun congratulates Lai, while Yinling remarks that even the heavens change color when he ascends. Embarrassed, the protagonist tells Yinling that she's exaggerating. To everyone's surprise, 3 men descend from the clouds. They ask the protagonist if he is Su Lai, the man who saved the saint. The second elder of the Hall of Pill states that he has already spoken with Yuan King through divine sense, and that they have since become soulmates. He hands a small gift to the protagonist and asks if his master has returned. Another man claims that he once traveled across the 9 states with the protagonist's master and that they share a deep friendship. He then urges the protagonist to reveal whether or not she has returned. Confused, the protagonist asks for a moment to process what is happening. The second elder apologizes for the abrupt arrival and explains that they witnessed a magnificent phenomenon over Yiqing Peak and thought that his master had returned. So they rushed over in the hope of finding her. Greeting everyone, the protagonist apologizes and states that his master has not returned. He explains that the phenomenon was caused by him just now. Stunned, they question whether his master truly hasn't returned, as the celestial vision they just witnessed was the resonance between heaven and earth caused by the Yuching technique, something that only his master should be capable of, an exclusive ability of hers. They then ask what stage the protagonist is currently at. He responds that he has just reached the refined furnace stage. This immediately raises suspicion among those present. They remark that despite his innocent appearance, they didn't expect him to be such a liar. The second elder then declares that enough talking has been done and that it's time to test the protagonist. He brings a type of stone close to the protagonist and confirms that he is indeed at the mid-level of the refined furnace stage. This leaves him wondering about the phenomenon from earlier. The protagonist then states that he doesn't want to hide the truth from them. He admits that his master did return, but only for a short time before leaving again. The sweetness was short-lived. Relieved by his confession, they tell the protagonist that he should have mentioned it earlier and that next time he must inform them when his master is truly back. With that, they step onto their cloud and depart. After expressing his gratitude for their departure, Yinling asks the protagonist why those men were so interested in his master. Kneeling down, the protagonist explains to Yinling that their master is known as the most beautiful woman in the cultivation world. Because of this, she has many devoted admirers. He then assures Yinling that when she grows up, she will certainly have many persistent admirers as well. But she shouldn't worry. He will personally drive them all away for her. Yinling thanks the protagonist. They are then interrupted by a young man calling out, asking if Su Lai is there. He introduces himself as Zhao Xin of the Hall of Sword and reminds Su Lai that they met 2 days ago. The protagonist replies that he remembers him. It's the guy who wanted to switch to spear combat. He then turns to Canyon and Yinling, saying that he has something to take care of and politely asks them to continue their training. The protagonist asks Zhao if, since their last meeting, he has made his own decision. Zhao immediately responds that he wants to start fighting with a spear and asks the protagonist to guide him on the right path. The system then notifies the protagonist that he has influenced Zhao Xin and changed his course in life, rewarding him with 3,000 destiny points. The protagonist begins reading Zhao Xin's script. Zhao Xin, Red Luck, eldest disciple of the Hall of Sword. His essay, My Father, the Hall of Sword Master, won the award for Best Literature in the Hall of Sword. Zhao Xin was confused, lonely, and lost. However, he chose to wield the spear under the guidance of Su Lai from Yicheng Peak. 1 month after visiting Su Lai, Zhao Xin breaks his sword bone to start anew. The heavens favor him. By accident, he enters the cold peak in a holy land of spirit and discovers a book about spear combat. In just 10 years, his spear fighting skills reach the pinnacle of core formation. However, during a mission, he encounters the greatest spear master of the demon sect. Zhao Xin has the opportunity to retreat, but to comprehend the heavenly Tao of spear combat through life and death, he chooses to charge forward and perishes in battle. Even though he dies because of this, Zhao Xin is eternally grateful to the person from Yicheng Peak who helped him decide to switch to the spear. Gratitude is always welcome. After reading what eventually happens to Zhao, the protagonist asks him if he really wants to give up the sword. He says he doesn't think the sword technique is that bad after all. Zhao asks the protagonist if he doubts his determination, and if that's the case, he will destroy his bone sword right here and now. He swears to use the spear only in this life. Immediately, the protagonist asks Zhao to calm down and says that he believes him, pleading for him not to do it. The protagonist asks Zhao if he isn't being too hasty. He says he can feel Zhao's pain just by hearing him speak. The system notifies the protagonist that because of what he said, Zhao Xin destroyed his bone sword a month earlier than planned. He is rewarded with 1,000 destiny points, another nice amount. Then the protagonist tells Zhao that since he's broken his sword, he should come back later. The protagonist will give him an unparalleled spear technique at that time. Zhao asks why he can't give him the technique now since he's already here. The protagonist replies that it's not the right time yet. He then tells Zhao that in the future, he will face a fatal encounter with a very strong opponent and asks him what he needs to do. Zhao confidently replies that he knows. He will fight that opponent to the death and understand the true essence of spear combat. He says he absolutely understands what the protagonist is saying. Shocked, the protagonist asks when he ever told Zhao to fight to the death. He says Zhao completely misunderstood him. In the Zhao family hall, a young man bursts in, calling the attention of Zhao's father and saying that something terrible just happened. Zhao Xin has broken his innate bone sword. Zhao Xin then arrives, apologizing for disappointing his parents. He explains that he decided to give up the sword and take up the spear. He won't change his mind. It was already decided. After hearing this, his mother faints in his father's arms. His father then yells, calling him a fool. Pointing to what Zhao Xin did, he says that it was very foolish of him. Soon after, Lingshu grabs her sword and says she will avenge her brother. Zhao Xin asks where she's going. Outside at Yuqing Peak, Lingshu demands that the bastard from the peak leave immediately. She says her brother broke his bone sword after leaving that place, and she suspects the protagonist incited him to do it. Opening the door, the protagonist tells Lingshu that she probably misunderstood. Without hesitation, Lingshu charges at the protagonist, intending to strike him with her sword, claiming she will kill him. Attempting to strike the protagonist, Lingshu accuses him of making her brother lose his bone sword. She shows her desire to kill him. The protagonist asks Lingshu since when he became perverted. He says her brother simply chose the path he wanted. Free will is basically that. In a failed attempt to attack the protagonist, Lingshu accidentally tears her dress. This causes her to kneel down, asking the protagonist how he dares to tear her clothes. She questions what he intends to do. The protagonist says it was an accident. He explains that if she hadn't tried to cut him, he wouldn't have defended himself with such force. He says he tried to stop her from falling, but ended up accidentally ripping her dress. Crying profusely, Lingshu says that only her mother has ever seen her body up until now, but now the protagonist has seen everything. She calls him a pervert and claims she is now contaminated. The protagonist responds to Lingshu, saying that he didn't see anything and asks her to stop crying. The protagonist tells Lingshu that the priority now is to get her a new outfit since her clothes are torn. If she keeps wearing them, everyone will see her body. Lingshu says that it's all the protagonist's fault and demands that he take responsibility. So the protagonist runs off and admits that it's all his fault. He claims he went out to buy a new set of clothes for her. A few minutes later, the protagonist returns with some clothes and hands them to Lingshu to change. He then asks her if she has finished changing. Embarrassed, Lingshu says that those clothes are too short. The protagonist replies that he didn't expect Qianyun's clothes to fit her. Then Lingshu points her sword at the protagonist and says that he shouldn't think he has made up for what he did just because he gave her some clothes. After all, he only did the bare minimum. She once again says that the protagonist ruined her brother's bone sword. Therefore, Lingshu says that the protagonist doesn't seem like a bad person, but she has to kill him anyway. With her hands raised, the protagonist asks Lingshu to calm down. He wonders if Zhao Xin breaking his bone sword affected Zhao Lingshu's fate in some way. The system then shows the protagonist that he needs to pinch Lingshu's cheek to fulfill her destiny. Without hesitation, the protagonist grabs Lingshu's cheek and tells her to stop. He says that her face will wrinkle if she keeps getting angry. After pinching her cheek, the protagonist realizes that Lingshu's fate script is golden luck. Reading her script, the protagonist knows that in the future, Zhao Xin will break his bone sword and take the spear because of Su Lai. In the end, he dies at the hands of the spear demon. To avenge him, his father also dies. Lingshu diligently cultivates and reaches the ascension stage. She becomes the supreme immortal female sword. She swears to avenge her father and brother. Now things are getting interesting. Confused, Lingshu runs off and says she will be waiting for the protagonist at the Hall of Sword. The protagonist asks Lingshu to wait and wonders why she would be waiting for him there. He questions if she thinks he's going to go there and die. He says he will never step foot in a Hall of Sword again in his life. Then Yimling arrives behind the protagonist and says that this is bad. She calls the protagonist to take a look at Qianyun. When they arrive, the protagonist gives Qianyun some kind of syrup and tells her that it's good for her to restore the spiritual energy she lost. He asks her to continue taking it for a while longer. A few minutes later, Qianyun tells the protagonist that she's feeling sleepy. He then tells her to sleep and he'll stay right there beside her. Soon after, Yinling asks the protagonist if Qianyun is sick. The protagonist tells Yinling not to worry. Qianyun isn't sick. She just had a breakthrough. The protagonist then tells Yinling that Qianyun went from key refinement to the refined furnace. She now needs a lot of spiritual energy to fill her Kai-Si, which is why she's suddenly weak. He says that she just needs to rest for a few days. Suddenly, the protagonist asks Yinling if she would help him if Qianyun tried to hurt him in the future. Hey everyone, are you enjoying the story so far? Make sure to leave a like to support it and let me know what you think in the comments. If there's a story you want to see here on the channel, comment the name. I'm always keeping an eye out for good stories. Yinling says that she doesn't think Qianyun would be angry enough with him to try and hurt him, but if that day really comes, she won't let Qianyun hurt him. However, she clarifies to the protagonist that he should apologize to Qianyun. She's furious for some reason. The protagonist says that he will definitely do that. Then Yinling hugs him and tells him not to worry. Qianyun likes him very much and she will surely forgive him. Happy, the protagonist hugs her back and says that he believes everything Yinling says. Remembering the past, the protagonist recalls the day he asked Qianyun why she didn't marry him when they grew up. Innocently, Qianyun asks him what marrying means. He says it means they'll be together forever. Qianyun questions whether the protagonist will ever desire someone else. He says there's no chance, and if he ever leaves her and falls for someone else, she can cut off his head. A fair price, right? Back to the present, the protagonist goes to cover Qianyun so she doesn't feel cold. Soon she has some spasms, calling for Lai, who then hugs her and tells her not to be afraid, as he's there with her. Qianyun asks the protagonist if he will abandon her. The protagonist asks why he would do that and says he'll be with her until the end of time. He tells her not to worry about it. 5 days later, while the protagonist is lying on Qianyun's lap and Yinling is playing, he says he's very happy that Qianyun has recovered. Then a bird flies by and delivers a letter to the protagonist saying it's from the sect. Curious, the protagonist knows he hasn't heard from the sect in a while and asks if there's any important news. After opening the letter, Qianyun asks Li what it says. He says they want Yinling to participate in the fresh blood battle, which will take place in 5 months. It's good as there's enough time to prepare. Inside the house, Yinling asks the protagonist what the fresh blood battle is. He explains that new disciples of the sect will fight among themselves to show the results of their cultivation. It's usually held 4 months after the new disciples begin training and 1 month before the sect's tournament. He adds that if there are any outstanding external disciples, they will be recruited as inner disciples of the Holy Land's peaks and halls. There will also be all kinds of rewards. Simply put, there are many benefits. Just know that the fresh blood battle affects the rewards, reputation, and promotion of someone. Feeling down, Yinling asks if she really has to participate. She says she doesn't know anything yet and claims she'll embarrass both of them. Qianyun pats her head and tells her not to stress about it. It's just a simple duel and won't be dangerous. Even if she's eliminated in the first round, she will always be his precious little sister. Sibling love is truly unique. The system notifies the protagonist about an update to Lu Yinling's fate. To read it, he has to complete the mission of feeding her. Worried, the protagonist puts a spoonful of food in Yinling's mouth and tells her not to worry, as he will always be there for her. The system notifies the protagonist again, saying that now he can read Yinling's fate. Suspicious, the protagonist gets up from the table, asking the girls to continue eating as he's finished his meal. Enraged, the protagonist wonders how Yinling's fate could be like that. Then the system reveals that on the 16th day, Lu Yinling will reach the sacred land of the spirit tomorrow, and the rest of the soul of the ancient demon Loon will awaken. Yinling will be possessed by the demon Loon. The story tells us that in ancient times, demons were everywhere. Humans and demons didn't distinguish between each other. All beings were equal. But later, the human ancestors pioneered cultivation methods. Thus, humans began to gain an advantage. The ancestor of the sacred land of the spirit died fighting the demon Loon to protect the creatures in the spiritual state. He died a hero. Outside trouble, the protagonist says that according to historical records, nothing remained of his ancestors or the demon long after that great conflict. He wonders how his ancestor disintegrated into nothing. Then how could there be a remnant of the demon Loon's soul? He questions whether he should believe the words of that system. He thinks it's better to be safe than sorry, but he wonders how he can stop this. He can't just go to the Supreme Elder of the Spirit, as he has no evidence to show that the demon Loon's soul will appear. He also wonders if he should go see the saint, but he knows she went on a training trip and doesn't know when she will return. The protagonist also knows he can't take Yinling with him and walk around outside. However, he believes they must eventually return to Yanqing Peak. He then has a quick memory of the past when someone showed him that all the valuables of Yanqing Peak are stored in that cabin. Arriving at the cabin, the protagonist finds the hammer of the King Long, the most precious item that the master obtained from a secret realm. She once used that hammer to strike the old Long from the Long Palace in the Eastern Sea. Although the protagonist is in a refined furnace and can't use the hammer with all his strength, taking care of a soul remnant that is billions of years old shouldn't be a problem, at least theoretically. On the Bone Mountain in the sacred land of the spirit, a blue dragon sees a small snake moving quickly on the ground. When it opens its eyes, the snake says it's not a body it's used to being in. After sniffing, the snake smells the scent of its relatives. In the forest, thinking he's alone, the protagonist meets Yinling. He calls her and says he will teach her today. Yinling sits beside the protagonist and they begin to channel. From a distance, the snake realizes that only Yinling smells familiar. It says that body will be hers and moves towards little Yinling, attempting to steal her body. While the protagonist tells Yinling that divine sense is essentially your heart and your belief, asking her to remember to move according to her heart and the blade. Immediately, the protagonist notices the snake approaching to attack Yinling and instantly strikes it with a hammer, throwing it away. Problem solved in the blink of an eye. Yinling asks the protagonist what just happened. The protagonist says it's nothing and tells her to continue her training as he needs to step out for a bit. Soon, the little dragon from before appears to the protagonist and says he's finished. That little dragon demands the protagonist become food for him. Even though he finds the little dragon cute and adorable, the protagonist says he can't have it around for Yinling's sake. He quickly binds the dragon with some kind of magic. Then the little dragon transforms into a young woman. Relieved to have solved that problem, the protagonist notices that Yinling is channeling very well. Then the system notifies the protagonist that Yinling's fate has changed, and thanks to him, she wasn't possessed. She then successfully enters the first phase of being a cultivator. The system then rewards the protagonist with 5,000 destiny points and a cultivation adjuster, single use. The cultivation adjuster can adjust someone's cultivation, creating a deceptive illusion that even the celestial Tao can be fooled. However, its effect lasts only 3 seconds. It's clarified that the cultivation adjuster can only deceive others. The host's cultivation remains unchanged. Unexpectedly, Yinling tells the protagonist that it's very hot and she's feeling extremely warm. She says she doesn't feel well and asks the protagonist to save her. Not knowing what to do, the protagonist tells her to stop crying and asks what he should do to help her. With her like this, it's hard to know what to do. Soon, Yinling says she feels light as a feather and thinks she can feel something. The protagonist tells her that it's spiritual energy and congratulates her. Now, she's a cultivator. From now on, she can cultivate without problems. Curious, Yinling asks the protagonist if that is really possible. The protagonist confirms and asks her to first learn the Yuching breathing technique to help the spiritual energy inside her body. He says he needs to take a break, asking Yinling to continue her training. He then hands her a book with some teachings and leaves. Soon, Yinling promises to train hard and not let the protagonist down. Now that's a true friend. At night at home, Yinling says she should help Canyon prepare dinner. Then she notices the snake that tried to attack her earlier is there. She immediately picks it up and apologizes for stepping on the snake. Yinling asks it what she should do, saying it seems so weak. Yinling remembers that the Yuching technique says releasing spiritual energy can heal others. So she begins to release spiritual energy and hopes it works. Seeing that it worked, Yinling is happy she did that. After waking up, the little snake remembers that in its past life it was a divine lone. It ruled the world and made all races bow their heads. But in ancient times, it died fighting the human bitch. Before dying, it used a secret method and gave up reincarnation just to have a chance to retain a fragment of its soul. After thousands of years, its soul finally awakened, and when the protagonist struck it, it nearly disappeared forever. Yinling asks the snake if it's okay. The snake says it's fine now and jumps out of her hand. Once again, Yinling apologizes for releasing it and asks if it just spoke. The snake says there would be no one else in the room but her, and says that the fall from her hand hurt. Yinling asks the snake if it's a demon. She says that her mother once told her that a demon is an animal with intelligence and can talk to humans. What an interesting fact about this culture. The snake says that in ancient times, tens of thousands of races existed, and no one distinguished between them. So according to Yinling's mother, what are humans to demons? Yinling says she doesn't know. The snake then says she didn't expect an answer anyway, but says that Yinling is her descendant, but then asks why Yinling isn't very bright. Confused, Yinling says the snake is wrong and that she can't be a snake. Enraged, the snake says that of course she was never a snake and she isn't a snake either. The blood running through Yinling's veins is the blood of the divine Lung, the ruler of the heavens. Still more confused, Yinling keeps insisting that this isn't right and that she's a human, not a snake or a lone. The snake then asks Yinling if she doesn't believe her. It immediately strikes Yinling's hand with its tail. What a rude move. Yinling questions the snake why it struck her hand. Calmly, the snake says that since Yinling didn't believe her, she made Yinling see for herself. She made Yinling transform a little into that loon. Crying, Yinling asks the snake why it has horns and a tail, claiming that it is truly a demon. Angrily, the snake tells Yinling to shut up and asks how she can cry. It says that many would only wish to carry the divine long bloodline. The snake tells Yinling that she can keep them if she doesn't like it and asks her not to lament like that, as it makes it seem like she's intimidating her descendant. Whining, Yinling asks how she can keep them. The snake asks Yinling how she doesn't know how to do that and questions why she has been lacking so much in the divine long law. The snake then tells Yinling to release her divine sense and not resist it. It makes the snake wonder how the silver lone bloodline is so weak in this child's body. This might mean that the great-grandfather of her grandmother or her grandmother's grandmother had the long silver bloodline but married a human. After that, they continued marrying humans. By the time of Yinling's generation, this should not happen. The divine loan laws don't prohibit marriages with other races, so there was a loophole. But when only a quarter of the divine loan bloodline remains, they must marry a divine loan. And that is the great plan for reproduction. The snake wonders if there really are no more divine loans in the world and if this child is the last descendant. The snake says it left the divine lung mark in Yinling, asking her to try and feel how to use it. Very happy to be able to hide its tail and horns, the snake says it doesn't understand why Yinling wants to hide. It mentions that dragon girls were popular in its time. Yinling asks if the snake is from a different generation. The snake says yes. It explains that during its time, immortals wandered the earth and nascent souls were common. It also says that spiritual energy was abundant back then, unlike now. But it claims that spiritual energy seems to be becoming denser now, and that the world will soon enter a new era of geniuses. The snake asks Yinling to tell her name and bow 3 times before her. Yinling introduces herself and asks the snake's name, also questioning why she must bow. The snake says that Yinling cannot speak her true name, but should call her Bai Susu. After Yinling bows, Bai will become her master. I think one specific person wouldn't be too happy with this. Startled, Yinling says she can't do that because she already has a master. Shocked by Yinling's response, Bai asks how she dares refuse. It says that Yinling doesn't know how many people beg to become Bai's disciple. Bai then asks who her master is, claiming that it's that human, and questions how he can be worthy since he doesn't seem strong. Yinling denies this and says that the man is her older brother. She also mentions that she hasn't met her master yet. She says that the protagonist told her their master owed 10 million spiritual stones to others and ended up fleeing. Bai asks that since her master fled, what really is left. Yinling says just her, the protagonist, and Cayenne. Bai asks Yinling if she thinks there is something unusual about the protagonist. Yinling says she remembers that he is good at predicting fortunes. She mentions that he seems to have inherited some kind of skill, as he's quite accurate. She adds that he predicted the saint's life was in danger and saved her. Bai tells Yinling that she cannot tell anyone about her or what happened between them, especially the protagonist. Bai asks Yinling to accept her as a pet, and when she reaches the long portal phase, the two of them will leave the Yunqing Peak to hide and cultivate. Bai also says that Yinling's bloodline will trigger a vision when she reaches that phase. She will be able to attract others to come to her and kill them. Yinling immediately rejects Bai's proposal, saying that the protagonist treats her very well and that she won't leave him. She also doesn't want to hide this from him, claiming that she will be honest and clean and tell him that they are both demons. After all, honesty is a pillar. Attempting to get into Yinling's mind, Bai says that she is very naive. She warns that if the protagonist finds out, he will sell her, and she and Bai will die a horrible death before that happens. Bai says that since Yinling doesn't care, she can tell the protagonist if she wants. After all, she can't escape anyway. If Yinling chooses to do so, fine, it's her decision. Immediately, Yinling asks Bai to make a promise. She tells Bai that she won't tell the protagonist about them, but no matter what, they cannot harm him, right? Bai then agrees to the promise, and they reach an understanding. The next day, the protagonist enters Yinling's room, asking if she is awake. After finding her still asleep, he assumes the training yesterday must have exhausted her. Approaching the bed to let her know breakfast is ready, he is startled to find that the snake from yesterday is next to Yinling. I would be really scared. Seeing Bai lying next to Yinling, the protagonist wonders if there has been any change in Yinling's destiny. The system immediately shows him that there has been no change. It then asks if he wishes to take a look at the lung spirit's destiny. Wanting to see it, the protagonist touches the snake with his finger and feels no pressure in doing so. After touching it and realizing how soft it is, Bai wakes up internally and wonders who is touching her chest. When she opens her eyes, she realizes it's the protagonist. Immediately, in a fit of rage, Bai gets up and asks the protagonist how he dares to touch her. She says that it is the first time a man has touched her. Realizing that the snake is alive, Yinling wakes up and apologizes to the protagonist for waking up late. She then asks if she can keep that snake as a pet. What an unusual request. The protagonist asks Yinling if she is referring to the snake next to her. She confirms. However, the protagonist says he feels a little hesitant. The system then shows the protagonist that the mission has been completed and that he can start reading. Soon after, he realizes that the snake's script is golden. Looking at the information, the protagonist learns that the snake's real name is Bai Sheshu. She has a proud personality and a huge ego. However, she is also loyal. After waking up from a billion years of sleep, she arrives at Yucheng Peak and becomes a small white snake. Through persistence and coincidence, Bai Susu eventually transforms into a dragon. After living at Yucheng for a few years, Bai Susu develops feelings for a man, but doesn't realize her true feelings. Due to an accident, she loses her virginity to him. After that, she cares even more for him, but doesn't admit her feelings. Gradually, more and more women come to the man. Unable to bear the jealousy, Bai Susu kills him in the end. What a beautiful love story, don't you think? After reading Bai Susu's script and realizing that the snake is a female, the protagonist wonders who the man is that will take her virginity. However, he quickly dismisses it, thinking that it's her private life. But he knows that if she transforms into a dragon, it will benefit him. The protagonist thinks of helping her become a dragon so that she will be grateful to him. The protagonist then pats Yinling on the head and says that she can keep the snake as long as she takes good care of it and makes it feel at home. Yinling immediately thanks the protagonist and says she will take very good care of the animal. The protagonist then pets the snake again with his finger and welcomes it into his family. Internally, Bai asks the protagonist to stop touching her body and wonders how he dares to profane her real body. But she quickly changes her mind as she feels the protagonist's touch on her true body. She finds it very pleasant and consequently becomes aroused. That's a strange reaction, but okay. The protagonist tells Yinling that although she used a healing spell on the snake, Yinling is still not very skilled at it. He says that he massaged the little snake a bit, so it should be fine now. Once again, Yinling thanks the protagonist for his help. Meanwhile, Bai internally revels in the touch from the protagonist and says she is now tainted. Later, Yinling gets up and goes to have breakfast with Bai. She immediately asks Bai to eat the fruit the protagonist gave her. She explains that it is a spiritual fruit that will help improve her health. Still angry, Bai says that she will not eat anything that the bastard gave her. However, she ultimately can't resist and eats the entire fruit. Then Bai says that from now on, Yinling should cultivate the divine legacy she gave her. She assures Yinling that from this point onward, she will guide her well. Bai clarifies that Yinling needs to cultivate the long divine legacy to awaken her bloodline, and the more she cultivates it, the more apparent her divine lung traits will become. She tells Yinling not to worry as she can still hide it for now. In a form of hallucination, Bai says to herself that she will train Yinling, and when the protagonist isn't looking, she will surprise him. He will die by her hands sooner or later. At the treasure hall, the protagonist asks an older man if he can make 2 outfits based on the sketches he provided. The man immediately praises the protagonist's designers, saying that the look is very bold, but assures him that the protagonist will be satisfied. The protagonist then says that he can't wait to see Canyon and Yinling dressed in that sailor outfit. As he prepares to leave for another location, a man from the mission hall calls out to him. The man tells him that it's great to have found him there, hands him something, and asks the protagonist to go complete his training mission. It was too calm for him not to ask for something. The protagonist then recalls that when disciples of the Holy Spirit land reach the refined furnace, they will receive a solo training mission, which is usually not difficult. He then reads the mission assigned by the man. At the Yucheng Peak mansion, the protagonist is greeted by Yinling, who informs him that the food is ready. The protagonist tells Yinling that he needs to leave for a while and asks her to take very good care of herself while he is gone. Yinling then asks the protagonist where he is going and how long he will be away from home. The protagonist immediately replies that he is going on a quest, and that he thinks he will be away for 2 to 3 months. Yinling becomes sad when she hears that the protagonist will be gone for such a long time. Hearing this from a distance, Bai is surprised to learn that the protagonist will be gone for a few months, and she knows that she won't have to secretly teach Yinling anymore. An opportunity has appeared for both of them. The protagonist tells Yinling that for cultivators like them, months pass in the blink of an eye. He reassures her that in less than a month, Canyon will finish her training and that Yinling won't be alone. The protagonist then hands Yinling a small bag and says he just bought it. He tells her that if she doesn't have anything else, she can use the spirit stones from there to buy things in the treasure hall. He also mentions that there is a holy mark there. He advises Yinling that if any problems arise, she should take that token and go to Fragrance Peak, where everything will be taken care of. Before leaving, the protagonist reminds Yinling to eat on time, not overexert herself while cultivating, rest enough, and if anyone comes there to harass her, she should go to Fragrance Peak. Yinling says she understands everything the protagonist said and will follow all his advice carefully. As he is about to leave, the protagonist asks Yinling to behave well, but before departing, he remembers the most important thing. He tells her that there are 2 sets of spiritual outfits he prepared for her and Qianyan in the storage bag. When Qianyan returns, the 2 should wear those outfits. The protagonist then says goodbye to Yinling, and finally the 2 of them were alone to train. Saddened, Yinling realizes that the protagonist has truly left. Bai and tells her to cheer up since the fresh blood battle will be soon. She says Yinling doesn't have much time to train and clarifies that as a member of the Lung clan, she can afford to lose in battles like that. She instructs Yinling to train according to her requirements from now on and to become the champion. Bai then says that if Yinling becomes the champion, the protagonist will be happy and reward her. Happy to hear this, Yinling says that the protagonist is the best. She wonders if the protagonist will pat her head and praise her if she gets first place. Excited, Yinling says she wants to get good ranking for Lai. A month and a half later, the protagonist says that when he first saw the mission, he thought it was ridiculous, but he never expected it to be so scandalous. He claims that Wind City is very far. Even flying there with a spiritual tool, it took over a month, a long way from where Judas lost his boots. At the mansion of the Wind City Lord, Moyu is woken up by a disciple informing her that a man named Sulai has entered the city. Surprised, Moyu says it was faster than she expected. She recalls that back then, her master gave Mo Lan and her 2 missions. One was to reach the Jade Phase within 100 years, and the other was to assassinate the saints from the Holy Spirit land. Whoever completes both missions first will become the next leader of the Darkman sect. The young disciple says that Saint Mo Lan is very direct and only knows how to go after Jiang Mingxi. She tells Mo Yu that she is smarter and is making a move using her weakness. Agreeing, Mo Yu says that she only needs to capture her lover and let hundreds of female demons contaminate him, seeing that Mo Lan won't be able to endure it. And when Mo Lan is mentally broken, how will she fight Mo Yu for the position of sect leader? Another disciple arrives to tell Mo Yu that Sulai has arrived at the mansion's entrance. Mo Yu says it's great and asks them to go and welcome Mo Lan's lover. After knocking on the mansion door 5 times and receiving no response, the protagonist wonders if anyone is even there since no one answered. A normal thought given the situation. Soon the girl opens the door and asks the protagonist who he is. The protagonist says he is Su Lei, a cultivator from Yucheng Peak of the Holy Spirit land, and that the city lord asked him to come and exorcise some demons. The young woman apologizes for the delay in opening the door and asks the protagonist to come in. As the protagonist enters the mansion, he feels something strange about the place and senses a bad energy. The young woman asks him to follow her. He soon realizes something isn't right, and that the smile on the young woman's face is very creepy, hiding something sinister. Startled, the protagonist pulls on the young woman's dress, causing her to ask what he is doing. Quickly trying to cover up, the protagonist says he thought he saw a cat sneaking in. She laughs, saying that he's funny but claims there are no cats around. Trying to play it off, the protagonist scratches his head and says he must have been mistaken. Suspicious, the young woman realizes that her backside was almost exposed and says she needs to tell Mo Yu to be more careful. Furious, the protagonist thinks that this system will one day ruin his reputation. He's forced to do something idiotic just to read others' destinies. He then begins to read the young woman's fate, since he needs to, of course. As the protagonist reads the young woman's fate, he realizes that her luck is cyan in color. He discovers that her name is Hai Kinking, a disciple of the Darkman sect, an employee of the saint of the Darkman sect, Mo Yu. She is loyal to Yu and came to Wind City with her. She defeats Su Lai and takes him back to the Darkman sect. Hai Kinking, along with 300 female demons, sleeps with Su Li, training his male vitality, and he almost dies from it. 500 years later, she becomes an elder of the Darkman sect. Shocked, the protagonist wonders who Mo Yu is and why she's connected to the Darkman sect. He questions why he's here to get rid of a demon and concludes that he can't defeat those high-level demons. Despite being tempted by the 300 female demons, he knows it's a temptation that would cost him his life. He wonders why this would happen in front of Mo Lan and if there's any special meaning behind it. He also wonders who Mo Lan is. He suddenly remembers that it's the 9-tailed fox who tried to kill Mingxi, a being he remembers quite well. He speculates that Mo Yu could have asked her to take revenge for her since he ruined her attempt to kill Mingxi. Just then, the jade his master left for him starts to glow and react to something the protagonist doesn't yet understand. If there's a formation activated, the jade can sense it, no matter how well hidden it is. The protagonist then apologizes to Kinking, mentioning that the demonic energy surrounding the place seems dense, and this could be problematic. He asks her where the city lord is, as he needs to ask a few questions to exorcise the demon more effectively. Kinking tells the protagonist that the city lord said there's no rush for him to do the work. Since he traveled so far, she'll take him to the backyard to rest first. The protagonist realizes that Kinking isn't even trying to hide her lies. When a normal house has demons or spirits present, people would be agitated, not even telling you. After taking the protagonist to a room to rest for a bit, Kinking goes to Mo Yu and informs her that she took Su Lai to rest in a room. She claims that he's not very smart, as she told him to wait one night and meet the city lord tomorrow, and he believed her. Moyu responds that it seems Su Lai has never experienced the cruel world. This must be his first time leaving the mountain to train. She says she will show him the dangers of the world. King tells Moyu that there's something she doesn't understand. Su Lai is only at the initial stage of refining the furnace. She says she could capture him alone, and now that they've set up a formation, he can't leave. It doesn't matter if he figures it out. So why don't they just knock him out and take him back with them, she asks. Moyu responds that killing a man isn't enough. The most important thing is to break a person's heart. She says they will kill Su Lai and break Mo Lan's heart. Outside the room, the protagonist thinks that he could wander around the mansion, using the excuse that he's looking for demonic energy. He wonders why he can't find the core of the formation. He knows that if he can find it, he'll be able to break the formation. The protagonist hears someone crying nearby. He immediately goes to investigate who it is. Behind a rock, the protagonist finds Moyu sitting and crying. Just then, the system announces that in order to read the young woman's script, he must lift her chin and look into her eyes for 1 minute. Another completely bizarre ritual. Without hesitation, the protagonist walks over to the young woman, lifts her chin, and stares into Moyu's eyes for 1 minute. After the minute requested by the system passes, the protagonist steps away from Moyu, apologizing and saying that he just wanted to see why she was crying. Whimpering, she says it's nothing. After the system completes the mission and unlocks her fate, the protagonist realizes that it's a golden fate. Script information: Moyu, one of the saints of the Darkman sect. She is of the bloodline of the divine nine-tailed fox, likes beef, milk, and papaya. Her weaknesses are ears and soles of feet. She despises matters of love within the Fox clan, but desires sweet love for herself. She competed with Mo Lan for the position of leader of the young sect. If one wants to become the leader of the young sect of the Darkman sect, there are 2 conditions, because nothing is free, of course. First, they must reach the Jade stage within 100 years. Second, they need to kill Jiang Ningji, the saint of the Holy Land of Spirits. Mo Yu and Mo Lan are fraternal twins. Mo Yu has hated her older sister, Mo Lan, since they were young. Whenever Mo Lan wants something, Mo Yu will definitely fight her for it. While Mo Yu and Mo Lan are competing for the position of leader of the young sect, Mo Yu shifts her attention to Su Lai because of Mo Lan. In the mansion of the Wind City Lord, Mo Yu pretends to be a weak woman near a lake. When Su Li approaches her, she knocks him unconscious and takes him back to the Darkman sect. She orders demons to extract all his male essence in front of Mo Lan. Mo Yu thinks she can break Mo Lan's spirit, but to her surprise, Mo Lan doesn't care for Su Lai at all. She is upset because she considers Su Lai her slave. She alone has the right to torture him. Mo Lan then fights with Mo Yu over Su Lai. Su Lai endures the sister's torture for 10 years and escapes from the Darkman sect. His face is pale and wan. His walk is sluggish. 200 years later, Mo Yu and Mo Lan both reach the Jade stage simultaneously. The sisters fight in Lily Valley. Mo Yu loses the battle in a tail. She leaves the Darkman sect. Many years later, Mo Yu ascends to the immortal stage and returns to the Darkman sect. She finally takes the position of sect leader. After the protagonist reads all this about the sisters, he puts his hands on his head, asking, "What the hell is all of this?" The protagonist realizes that Mo Yu didn't come here because Mo Lan sent her. She's here on her own and hates her sister. So he wonders why Mo Yu is trying to harm him instead. The protagonist claims that he can't understand this. Mo Yu despises Mo Lan, but so does he. After all, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. But soon the protagonist understands that he's a gentleman, so why would he try to touch a stranger? Upon looking back, the protagonist finds Mo Yu kneeling and looking at him. He notices how beautiful she is. Suddenly, he is struck by something in his chest, as if under some kind of charm. He slaps his face and says that he can't fall for the charms of that demon, or he'll lose his life if he's careless. Mo Yu then stands up and says she will leave, but as she does, she trips over a stone in front of her and falls into the lake right in front of the protagonist. Then she screams for the protagonist to help her. The protagonist then understands Mo Yu's intuition. She obviously tripped in order to get the protagonist to fall into her trap, and that the lake probably only reaches her waist. The protagonist says that if he ignores her and leaves, she will capture him anyway out of anger because her plan failed. He realizes that it seems like he can play along and save her, so he asks his master to bless him so that he can get through this safely. An extra blessing is never too much. Jumping in and saving Mo Yu, after they get out of the lake, Mo Yu thanks the protagonist, claiming that if he hadn't been nearby, she could have drowned. Not paying much attention to Mo Yu, the protagonist says he's glad she's fine and tells her that since she's all right, he'll leave. Turning his back on Mo Yu, she runs after him, asking him to wait for her. Soon the protagonist falls and Mo Yu crawls toward him, saying his nose is bleeding. With his hand on his face, the protagonist says he's fine and tells Mo Yu that she should get up. Then she approaches the protagonist and says that he saved her and she still hasn't thanked him for it. And now that his nose is bleeding, she asks him to let her take care of him. The protagonist insists that he's fine and tells Moyu that it's cold outside and she should go back, showing a bit of concern for her. Moyu tells the protagonist that she is King Yu, the daughter of the city lord. She says that she has been weak since she was young. And a few days ago, a doctor told her she has less than a month left. She has nothing to reward the protagonist for saving her today, and says that the only thing she can offer in return is her virginity. If he accepts, he will also fulfill her wish. She asks the protagonist if he really can bear to steal Moyu's chance to repay him. Inside, Moyu is only waiting for the protagonist to slip up so she can put her plan into action. She believes there's no way the protagonist won't succumb to her. As soon as he makes a move, she'll act. The protagonist realizes that all his resistance is fading away. Then Moyu charges at the protagonist, trying to kiss him. The protagonist immediately asks her to stop and says he knows exactly what she's trying to do. Surprised that the protagonist knows her real name, she wonders if Mo Lan might have told him. But then she questions why Mo Lan would share her name with her lover. She asks again how he knows who she is and who that guy is. I'm curious too now. In another attempt to make the protagonist fall into her trap, Moyu asks who this Moyu the protagonist mentioned is. She wonders if this young woman looks like her. In that case, she asks the protagonist to let her take her place and says she's willing to do so. Soon the protagonist replies that she is the Moyu he mentioned, one of the saints of the Darkman sect. He adds that Mo Lan is her older sister. She says she didn't expect the protagonist to discover her identity. Moyu then reveals her true identity and displays her 9 beautiful tails and her beautiful black dress. She asks the protagonist how he knew it was her. The protagonist is mesmerized by Moyu as he sees her fox ears, dark tail, and long legs. Soon, Moyu advances toward the protagonist and asks if that bitch Mo Lan told him about her. Knowing he must stay calm and not be seduced, the protagonist needs to keep up his act. He tells her that he and Mo Lan have nothing to do with each other. But since Moyu needs a reason from him, he says that the reason he stopped Mo Lan from killing Ningxi was that he wanted Moyu to become the leader of the Darkman sect. He had a favorite in the end, after all. Startled to hear that, Moyu stammers, asking the protagonist what he just said. He then explains that the old witch from the Darkman sect once told her 2 disciples that there were 2 conditions to becoming the young leader of the sect. The first condition is to be the first to reach the Jade phase. A second condition is to kill the saint in the spirit land. Whoever fulfills these 2 conditions first will become the leader of the young sect. He asked Moyu if he is right. Once again, Moyu asks the protagonist who he is. She realizes that the protagonist knows that the master is a woman. She claims that Mo Lan could not have told him that, as the 2 of them swore on the heavenly Tao never to reveal their master's gender. Neither of them can mention anything about it. Stammering, Moyu asks the protagonist why she should believe him. She says that Mo Lan used a shape-shifting spell to transform into a girl. She then entered the disciple ceremony in the Holy Land of the Spirit to kill Jiang Mingxi. She asks Moyu if she knows why Mo Lan failed the mission. She probably should know the reason. Moyu then asks what the reason was. The protagonist says the reason was him. It was he who ruined her plan. He claims that he wanted Moyu to become the young leader of the Darkman sect, not Mo Lan. That's why she must fail all her missions. Confused about what's going on, Moyu says she thought the protagonist was her lover, but she realizes it was he who frustrated her assassination attempt. She asks the protagonist why it should be her and not Mo Lan. The protagonist then answers that the answer is simple. She is more talented, beautiful, and intelligent compared to Mo Lan. This leaves Moyu completely embarrassed. Soon, Moyu knows she can't let the protagonist win her over with just a few simple words, but the protagonist can't resist her cuteness. Moyu asks the protagonist how she can know that he is capable of helping her secure the position of young leader of the sect. The protagonist says, why? Just then, the system shows the protagonist that he needs to activate the cultivation adjuster. Without hesitation, the protagonist activates the adjuster. He is now in the ascension phase. He will experience the phenomenon that comes with ascension. It seems so real that the protagonist might even deceive the celestial Tao. The effect lasts for only 3 seconds, a reasonable amount of time. Showing that ascension peak in just 3 seconds, the protagonist asks Moyu how capable he is. Moyu asks if the protagonist is in ascension after seeing that scene. The protagonist asks Moyu what she thinks of it. Stammering, Moyu asks the protagonist what the price would be for him to help her. Laughing heartily, the protagonist says that's a good question. But inside, he wonders what he can charge Moyu. He says he's so dumb for not thinking ahead. Knowing he'll have to come up with something, the protagonist says that no matter what, he will help her become the young leader of the Darkman sect. and 400 years before she becomes the leader of the sect, and 100 years after she becomes the leader, she'll have to serve the protagonist. That's a total of 500 years. Moyu wonders, what if the protagonist asks to have relations with her? She says that divine nine-tailed foxes are rare sexual partners, and if the protagonist asks for that, once the 500 years are over, they'll part ways. Not much time, huh? Stammering, Moyu asks, serve you. She says she is willing to agree to the protagonist's terms but has two conditions. First, he cannot claim her innocence. Second, their agreement must be sworn on the celestial Tao and divine souls, and neither of them can go back on their words. The protagonist immediately agrees. He says he's not surprised by the first condition she asked for. Although they are supposedly vixens, the women of that clan are unexpectedly innocent. They want the man they love to deflower them. Once they love a man, they will love him for life. Thinking to himself, the protagonist considers that if a nine-tailed divine fox drugs herself and has relations with a man, then no matter how much she hates him, she will be loyal to him for the rest of her life. The protagonist says that the master once told him a story. 5,000 years ago, there was a cultivator who killed the parents of a nine-tailed divine fox right in front of her. Asterisk in the story, this cultivator tells the divine fox that she only sought revenge. She says she won't kill any innocent people, but if the divine fox wants to avenge her parents, she can come after her anytime. The divine fox then rushes at the cultivator with a golden aura, trying to attack her. But the cultivator easily defends herself, so the nine-tailed divine fox trains hard and pursues that cultivator to avenge her parents. But one day, something unexpected happens. They fall into a pit filled with aphrodisiac gas, and so they copulate. After that, the lady fox was exasperated. Although she swore to kill the cultivator, she never slept with another man. Moreover, she became pregnant. 2,500 years ago, she founded her sect and swore to kill everyone from that man's sect and his disciples. She wanted to completely crush his sect. And that was today's story. If you liked it, leave a like to support, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next videos. Don't forget to comment what you think and what story you want to see here. I'm always answering comments, and the best stories you send, I'll bring them here. Stay tuned, see you in the next videos.